think it's very clear that the emphasis on the survey is on this issue of expanding the understanding, the scope of enhancing what we call total factor reduction, right? And that means to focus on quality capital investments and then quality labor investments or services. So if you look at doing that, I think there's, in total factor reduction we talk about basically labor, of course, investment, but also what they call intermediate products or outputs. And it calls for looking at that. I mean, in terms of quality labor, obviously education is going to be important. So in the meantime, of course, as we know, employment rates are very relatively high in certain countries, and that is indicative of slow job creation in the economy. So you have low growth, you have low or almost negligible job creation, and so what does that allow for us as those who are very keen about addressing SDGs? Well, I think it's, if you read actually, if you also look at the UNDP's UN Development Report, you'll see a lot of complementarity. And it says that among enhancing labor, the labor pool, is not just looking at enhancing its rates, but also enhancing the quality of work. The idea of decent work, expanding that, looking at social protection to allow periods when you are unemployed, things like that. So ASCAP is contributing to the discussion on SDGs by focusing on this issue of this notion of trying to boost growth in productivity. And productivity, as I already said, is you capture investment, you capture labor, and therefore, how do you do that? Well, on the investment side, we know that it's low, there's a lot of debts, so how do we restructure perhaps those debts, but also how do we find ways in which especially the more vulnerable populations can boost their quality of life and of course the prospects for a better life.
Well, of course, the goals have to be achieved at the country level, but I think the role of the UN, or the survey in particular, is to provide the information, the background, the challenge, identify the challenges, and then suggest advice on what measures or what policy strategy need to be pursued in order to be able to implement it. So, in a way, it's helping the countries. No, I said that this needs to be done regularly. Regularly, because sometimes the countries are reacting late. So if you just like an early warning or reminder, to do it. I think the last survey that was launched here in Jakarta in 2014, the executive secretary would like to come. She could not come, but I know Hassan was here and I was there too. And Bank Indonesia was the host at that time. And we did talk about these quality issues that need to be addressed by Indonesia. But I'm no longer in the government, so while I'm saying something, they may not listen to me, but I thought maybe somehow, ESCAP or the UN in general, can communicate these things in many different forums to the government's member state, so that they really understand. So later on, they cannot say that, well, you didn't mention it to me or you didn't warn me. I think that's the role of the UN, to promote and cooperation, to promote right development policies in countries, but also to promote regional cooperation.